Today is Ascension Day, the day when we think of Jesus going back up into heaven. It's a time when we think of Jesus as majestic, as glorious, as godlike. And certainly when we read the story in Acts chapter 1, we get that kind of picture of Jesus. It says this, that as they were watching, Jesus was lifted up. A cloud took him out of their sight. And while they were gazing up, they saw two men in white robes standing there. And they then give a message to the disciples. Glory is seen in the clouds carrying Jesus away, that the godlikeness is seen in the angels being present at this time. It's a point where perhaps the figure of Jesus becomes a bit harder to relate to. It's no longer the Jesus that we've seen in the Gospels, who gets hungry, who has to walk everywhere, who stumbles under the weight of a cross. Jesus is now glorious, strong, present everywhere. But the experience of this earth has marked the Christ of glory. It's picked up in one of our traditional hymns. If you know the hymn, Crown Him with Many Crowns, one of the verses says, crown him the Lord of love, who shows his hands and side, those wounds yet visible above, in beauty glorified. And in a moment we're going to use a prayer from Kathy Galloway of the Iona community that again picks up that idea of the risen, ascended Jesus carrying the scars of his cross. The ascended Jesus still bears the marks of his suffering and his sorrow. The glorious Christ is the Jesus who has shared our frailty, is the Jesus who has suffered and died, is the Jesus who has felt forsaken and abandoned, is the Jesus who has entered into death. Christ in his majesty is yet the Jesus who can speak to us in our sorrow and in our hurt, who can comfort, who reaches out to us understanding our need, and who asks us to reach out into the world from our experience of pain and injustice and work to transform the world. Well, I invite you now to join with me in prayer. In a moment, I'll lead us in a blessing. But first of all, some prayers from Kathy Galloway of the Iona community. O Christ, true image of God, we come drawn by your glory. O Christ, revealer of life in its fullness, we hide fearful of your light of truth. O Christ, lifted up in weakness, we hope in your power for change. Lord Jesus, may we who love you and find in you our hope bear witness, as Thomas your disciple did, that your risen, ascended body still carries the marks of the world's violence, injustice and greed. And as we remember, help us to keep faith with all who still today suffer the outrages of violence, injustice and greed in our actions, in our prayers, in our choices, in our commitment. Make us makers of peace and your faithful children. Ascended Jesus, glorious Jesus, scarred Jesus, from your wounds may comfort flow, may healing come, may peace be known. Amen.